Hey, what's going on, everybody? Andrew here, back for our build review show. It is Wednesday, October 16th of 2024. And on this show, I bring users' builds up live on stream, giving them personalized feedback and advice about things that I think that they can do differently in their builds to help improve their post-contest sim ROIs, build stronger lineups, submit stronger lineups into their contests. So we do this show Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern. If you ever want to get signed up, drop your DK username in the office hours channel in our Discord server. Let me know what sport and slate you want me to review, and I will add you to the list for the next show. But with that said, we do have a couple people signed up today. Going to look at some NHL contests, going to look at some NFL, and we will be giving our best advice that we got here. So I'm going to start with Bulldog here, and we're going to look at yesterday's NHL main slate. So let's get that up on the screen. And let's hop back to yesterday. And we will start in the contest tab as always. Okay, so good contest selection split here, right? About $10 in single entries and 3 maxes, and then the other 25 in 20 maxes. So this is perfect split, exactly what we want to see. Now let's go ahead and look at the hip check, see how these lineups graded out. Sort by sim ROI. And what are we seeing? So the highest sim ROI sets here are somewhere in the 25 to like 35 range is a good benchmark here of something to shoot for. Bulldog is negative 9%. So we'll dive in here and see kind of why that is, what we can change to help them improve. Pretty high average salary, looks fine. Uniqueness looks fine. Noticing that their sim average score is a little bit on the low side here, 96.8. You know, we see users all the way from 100 to 108.6. So there's like a pretty big range here. I think that, you know, that just shows like, hey, projection isn't everything, right? You can have a big projection disparity and still grade out well, but it just seems like they're going too far down with 96.8. So we'll figure out why that is. All right, so let's jump in here, and I think we've seen all we can see from this post-contest screen, so let's jump into a build and see what we can see there. All right, so we're in this build that he used to fill his lineups, so let's see what we're seeing. So 5K lineups. I don't know what the default minimum salary is. So the default's 45K. It looks like they lowered it 500. I'm not sure 100% why. I don't know if that's like a thing or not. But we see a lower minimum salary. No filters or rules to start. We do see a couple post-build filters. Okay, I would probably guess it's coming from one of these. So they have an ownership cap filter, a projected score filter, and a geo mean filter. So I don't know exactly the impact that these had, but I think that this is where the low projection is coming from. So on a 9-game NHL main slate, you know, and we can go back to the post-contest sim results to see this. So let's go back to the hip check. And then so we're sorting by sim ROI highest to lowest, right? The average dupes for all of the top sets is 0. That doesn't mean that they're all accounting for duplication and trying to be unique. It just means that duplication is not really a factor in this type of contest, in this NHL classic slate, 9 games. The player pool is so big that you basically don't need to account for it. Now, one way of getting unique with GeoMean is by sacrificing projection. So that's what I would imagine is happening. Basically, the way I like to think about this is I do not like to account for duplication until duplication smacks me in the face, until I win a contest and I am duped and I don't make as much money as I would have if I was unique. Then I would do it. Or if I'm seeing it heavily in the post-contest sim results, right? Like we were studying a 12-game college football slate, and we saw that there was actually quite a bit of duplication in those lineups. I was like, wow, you should definitely account for it in this case. But when we go back into the NHL results, we don't see high duplication. At that point, I'm like, hey, you don't really need to account for this. So what I would probably recommend here is turning off the ownership and GeoMean filters and being okay playing higher owned and GeoMean lineups, because it doesn't seem like it's really having an effect on lineups actually being played by other users. So I think if you just turn these two things off, that's going to help you out a ton to get to higher projected lineups, probably better lineups overall. So, will that carry over? Should you use that for like a 2-game hockey slate, a 3-game hockey slate? I'm not 100% sure, right? You could probably go back and study some of the slates. Like I think there was a 3-game hockey slate on like Monday. It was like a early and then like a main, and they were both 3 games. You can go and study those and say, hey, was duplication a factor here? And basically have like guidelines, right? I do this where I'm like, okay, 2 and 3 game 2 and 3 game NFL slates, duplication is more important, or is more of a factor. 4 to 6 games, it's a little important, not as important. And then 6 games plus, it's typically not much of a factor at all, right? And I'm like, okay, for this size, I'm going to use these filters. For that size, I'm going to use these filters. For this size, I'm going to use these filters, right? And I kind of know what they are. So, that all comes from studying. So basically, I would turn off ownership and GeoMean here in the post build. And honestly, I think that's going to help you out so significantly that is basically the only advice I want to give you at the moment is turn those two things off and see how your lineups improve. And then honestly, come back and sign up for the show again, and we'll continue to iterate on it from there. But first step is turn those two off and see how your lineups do. All right. Good stuff there. And the contest selection was really good as well. So very happy with that. Let's hit our next person here, which is going to be Adam. And we're going to study some NFL main slate from the weekend. And let's go back to Sunday. And let's let this build load. All right, good stuff. Let's go to the contest tab. Start there as always. Okay. So what are we seeing? So if I actually had to say anything about, this set here, and this is not something we see super often, is that Adam's kind of a little bit heavier on the single entry and 3 max than the other way around. So they're still starting like from the ground up, right? I mean, we see $3 single, $3 3 max, $3 single, $5, $12. But the one thing I'm noticing, right, is like our in money in play is about $1,000. Well, if you take the $3, the 3 entries in the milli, which is 60, the $3 20 max is another 60, so 120. The $1.20 is 140. The $4.20 is another 80, it's like 220. So we really only have like $220 in 20 max and 150 maxes. And we have about like 80% of the portfolio is in single entries, right? So I would like to see this closer to 50-50. You know, our bankroll back testing showed that like you should be at most playing 50% of your action in single entry and 3 max. And if anything, you should be playing less. Like our recommendations are like 25 to 50% single entry 3 max, and then 50 to 75% of your bankroll allocation to 20 max, 150 max, where you can get more lineups down. So it's okay to be, play more single entries, but closer to 50-50 would be good, as opposed to this 80-20 split. All right. With that said, let's jump in here and study some of these lineups. I'm going to choose, let's see if we can get this $1.20 max to load. 178,000 entries. Hope it's okay. Hope it doesn't take too long. So let's see. Might need to give it just a minute here. All right, cool. Loaded. And we didn't even get a page responsive error. Awesome. All right, 20 lineups. Sim ROI. So this is a really, really strong set of lineups, right? 113% sim ROI here. This is great. This is exactly what you want to see. Some of the highest ROIs, like 130 to 140 range. This is still really, really good. I'd be super happy if I logged on and saw this, right? Probably the only thing I'm noticing is that, the sets that are a little bit higher have a little higher sim average score. We see these in like I think the lowest here is like 134 sim average score to like 138, and Adam's at 131. So even if he got his sim average score a little bit higher, it'd probably put him closer to the top here. But I'm not upset about it, and I'm still pretty happy with the 113% that we're seeing. So that's good. All right. So good news here, right? Adam did swap, right? Ran a late swap for all these builds. That is really good. It sounds like Adam even commented like, hey, I did my first swap using SaberSim. That's great, right? Re-optimizing your lineups at that afternoon window is super important, right? There were 4 games in the afternoon window and 6 games on the early slate. So the slate's only 60% over. Before the afternoon comes, these games can have a huge impact on how the slate plays out. So good to re-optimize there. All right. So I'm not sure 100% what build the 20 max lineups came from. So let's just click into some of these, see what they look like. No saved here. No saved in build 3. Let's try build 4. Okay, so it looks like the lineups came from build 4, because I do see lineups in the save section here. So let's put these back. Give this a second. Revert those. All right, so what are we seeing in this build? So default, minimax salary, 5K lineups. We see one rule here, which we'll look at in a second. Don't use players against opposing D. Default rule. Cool. Nothing wrong with that. 1 min unique. You see average projection, median ROI. Looks good. No lineup filters. We do see a lot of max exposures here. We do see a lot of them. This is probably the source of like the lower projection. You know, I noticed that when you capped Bucky Irving, you got to like lower average projection. That's just because he grades out so well, like point per dollar, where, you know, you're getting like he was the highest value player on the slate at 3.31 value. And when you capped him, you're sacrificing projection to do that, which is a risk management call. You know, it's like totally your choice. What I would say is I don't know exactly where all these where all these max exposure decisions come from. But just be sure, you know, this is what you want to do, you know, whether that's grading them, whether that is, you know, being convicted in the research that you're doing that leads to them. You know, it is a lot of max exposures, no minimum exposures for that matter, but just be sure, you know, you're okay with that. It doesn't seem like it's affecting your lineup. Still high sim ROI, so definitely not going to tell you not to do it. But you know, I always think it's good to hold yourself accountable and be objective with the decisions that you're making, and, you know, figuring out like, hey, was this a good decision or not? And should I do it again the next week? Right? That's almost more important. It's like, hey, should I do this thing again next week? Again, we see a lot of max exposures for quarterbacks. We saw position players, none for defense. A little particular about the stack types being used. You know, one thing I've mentioned to people here is, you know, run a default build and basically look at the pool exposures from a default build with the exposures that you're removing, and making sure like you're not removing anything too common, right? Like if QB3 was popping at like 25%, you know, you should be really, really sure you want to remove QB plus 3 because it's coming up at such a high rate, right? So just making sure that you're, you know, sure about the stack types that you're using. But other than that, you know, don't see anything else. So, you know, again, really, really strong set of lineups. You know, to kind of summarize here, try and get closer to a 50-50 contest selection split between single entry and 3 max and 20 max, 150 max. Sim ROI was really, really, really good. So good stuff there. Be positive. You want to make these exposure adjustments. Try and be objective. Try and analyze them and not just do them blindly. And, you know, possibly like run a default build and check the stack types that you're giving up and making sure that you're making a conscious decision to do so. But otherwise, very, very good set. Glad you late swapped. It looks like it helped out a ton here. So good stuff, Adam. All right. Those are our 2 users who had signed up today for the build review show. Reminder, if anybody ever wants to get signed up, all you got to do, drop your DK username in the office hours channel. Let me know what sport and slate you want reviewed, and I will add you to the list for the next show. But appreciate everybody tuning in. Good luck tonight in your DFS contest, and I will see you all tomorrow. So until then, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.